3:47 a.m. Gulf Standard Time. Thursday. The Persian Gulf sits at 31 degrees Celsius at the surface. Flat, dark, humidity turning the air into something that has to be breathed rather than inhaled. On the flight deck of the carrier positioned 190 nautical miles southeast of Bahrain, the night watch operates under red deck lighting. Aircraft respotted, fuel states checked, ordnance loaded, and rechecked. The carrier air wing has been at increased readiness for 72 hours. No one has said publicly why. Privately, the intelligence picture has been deteriorating for 11 days. At 3:47 a.m., the intelligence picture becomes irrelevant. The first ignitions appear simultaneously across 17 coordinates in the Zagros mountain range, the western spine of Iran. Valleys dark for months suddenly produce thermal signatures visible from low Earth orbit. Liquid fuel, Shahab-3, medium-range ballistic missiles, systems requiring approximately 30 minutes of pre-launch preparation. Preparation that U.S. reconnaissance assets had been monitoring for 4 hours without triggering an immediate alert because the pattern had been assessed as a readiness exercise. The assessment was wrong. 14 Shahab-3s lift from pre-surveyed launch points. Their plumes rise above the ridgelines, visible from 200 kilometers as orange columns against the black mountain faces. They are not alone. At 8 separate mobile positions across Kermanshah and Ilam provinces, Fateh 313 solid-fuel ballistic missiles ignite simultaneously. No pre-launch thermal signature, no preparation window, simply the sudden bloom of a solid rocket motor reaching full thrust in under 2 seconds. 12 Fateh 313s. Harder to track, harder to predict, carrying a terminal maneuvering capability that complicates intercept geometry in ways the Shahab-3 cannot. And from the coast, Bandar Abbas, Jask, the island positions at the Strait of Hormuz, 47 Noor and Gator anti-ship cruise missiles launch in staggered waves, skimming 4 to 8 meters above the Gulf surface, radar seekers in passive mode, navigating by inertial guidance toward the carrier group's last known position. Total first wave, 26 ballistic missiles from the Zagros axis, 47 cruise missiles from the coastal axis, 73 weapons in flight simultaneously, targeting Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, and the Carrier Strike Group. The adversary had committed everything. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had not made this decision irrationally. Their strategic calculus, reconstructed from communications intercepts and the forensic analysis of targeting choices, was internally coherent and based on genuine intelligence. The nuclear negotiation track had collapsed completely 17 days earlier. Not suspended, collapsed, with public recrimination leaving no diplomatic pathway for a minimum of 90 days. The IRGC assessment held that this was the window. U.S. political attention fractured, the operational tempo of U.S. forces in the region visibly decreased, 2 carrier groups rotated home without replacement, leaving a single carrier posture that IRGC wargaming assessed as the most favorable force distribution they would face for the next 3 to 5 years. Their targeting logic was dual-axis by design. Al Udeid and Al Dhafra housed the air operations infrastructure for any U.S. counterstrike. Disable those runways and the air campaign would be delayed 24 to 48 hours. Enough time to demonstrate resolve and seek a negotiated pause. The carrier group was the second axis. The Noor and Gator Salvo was not expected to sink the carrier. The IRGC technical staff assessed that a saturation of 40 or more cruise missiles against Aegis defense would produce 2 to 4 hits statistically, enough to damage flight operations and generate the political shock that had forced U.S. withdrawal from Lebanon in 1983. The IRGC had studied 1983 carefully. The flaw was specific and fatal. Their intelligence on cooperative engagement capability, the CEC network that links every Aegis platform in a battle group into a single integrated fire control architecture, was 7 years out of date. Their wargaming modeled each Aegis destroyer as an independent point defense unit. The reality was that 3 destroyers, 2 cruisers, and the carrier's own SM-6 battery were operating as one system. Every ship's engagement enveloped the effective sum of all 5 platforms. They had prepared for a 1990s Aegis. They encountered a 2024 CEC network. The cost of that 7-year intelligence gap would be measured in the next 61 minutes. 3:47 a.m. 4 seconds after the first Shahab-3 ignition, the space-based infrared system satellite detected 17 simultaneous thermal plumes above the Zagros ridgeline. Processing completed in 1.3 seconds. The classified alert to NORAD and CENTCOM was generated at 3:47 a.m., 6 seconds after the first missile left the ground. The infrared analyst on duty at Buckley Space Force Base was 24 years old. She had monitored the Iranian sector for 9 months. The thermal pattern on her display at 3:47 a.m., 17 ignitions in a valley she had studied on 17 previous quiet shifts, was unmistakable. Her protocol required confirmation before alert escalation. She confirmed in 1.6 seconds. The previous record for confirmation to alert transmission on a live launch event was 2.3 seconds. She pressed the commit at 3:47 a.m., 40 seconds before any Shahab-3 had crossed its apogee. In those 40 seconds, CENTCOM had the full launch picture. NORAD had trajectory analysis. The carrier's Tactical Flag Command Center had track data. Every Aegis ship in the strike group had targeting solutions loaded. At 3:47 a.m., CENTCOM issued engagement authorization. The layered defense activated as a single system. 3:49 a.m. The Aegis cruiser at the northern boundary of the carrier group's defensive perimeter fired its first SM-3 Block IIA at 3:49 a.m., targeting the lead Shahab-3, highest altitude, most predictable trajectory, cleanest intercept geometry. The SM-3 cleared the VLS cell at 9,600 feet per second. At mid-course phase, above 150 kilometers altitude, the kinetic intercept vehicle separated and began terminal guidance. Intercept confirmed at 3:51 a.m. First track eliminated. The SM-3 battery continued working the threat queue from highest to lowest altitude. The CEC network ensured no 2 ships wasted interceptors on the same track. Second Shahab-3 intercepted. Third. Fourth. Liquid fuel systems, predictable apogees, standard ballistic trajectories, favorable geometry throughout. Then the Fateh 313 tracks complicated the picture. The 12th ballistic track executed a terminal maneuver at 3:52 a.m. Not a large maneuver. 1.8 degrees of lateral deflection from thrust vector control in the final 30 seconds of flight. The SM-3 intercept vehicle, already committed to its intercept solution, could not compensate. The interceptor passed within 40 meters of the warhead. Off-axis detonation. Insufficient proximity. The Fateh 313 continued on its adjusted trajectory. The THAAD battery at Al Dhafra, tracking the same target as its backup, fired at 3:52 a.m. Clean hit. The Fateh 313 neutralized at high altitude, debris descending into unpopulated desert 40 kilometers west of the base. But the THAAD battery's ready load was now 2 interceptors lighter, and the reload cycle required 7 minutes. 7 minutes of reduced capacity that the adversary lacked the reserve to exploit. The coastal cruise missiles presented a different problem. Flying at 4 to 8 meters altitude, they were below the engagement envelopes of both THAAD and SM-3. SM-6 dual-mode interceptors began engaging the cruise missile threat at 3:51 a.m., working outward tracks first. By 3:55 a.m., 31 of 47 cruise missiles had been intercepted. 16 remained inside the defensive perimeter. Patriot PAC-3 MSE batteries at both air bases were simultaneously managing final phase ballistic tracks. At Al Udeid, 6 Fateh 313 warheads reached the PAC-3 engagement envelope at nearly the same moment, a timing the adversary had designed deliberately. Calculating simultaneous terminal tracks would exceed the battery's engagement rate. The calculation was not wrong. It was simply not correct enough. 5 of the 6 Fateh 313s were intercepted in a 19-second window that pushed the fire control system to maximum processing load. The 6th, the final track, was intercepted at 3:54 a.m. at 1,200 meters altitude, 4.8 kilometers from the Al Udeid runway threshold. Warhead neutralized. Debris fields scattered across 600 meters of desert east of the base perimeter. 3 runway approach lights damaged. 1 vehicle disabled by fragment impact. 1 minor injury. It was the closest moment of the entire ballistic engagement phase. The adversary had pushed a single battery to maximum engagement rate and nearly created a gap. With 6 more Fateh 313s in that simultaneous salvo, the mathematics would have worked differently. They had only had 6. At sea, CIWS systems on 2 destroyers engaged final phase cruise missile leakers at ranges between 900 and 1,400 meters. The 20mm rotary cannon at full cyclic rate, the sound every Navy crew has trained to recognize but hopes never to hear in operational conditions. Both engagements were successful. 1 cruise missile neutralized at 850 meters from the destroyer's hull. That ship's CIWS had expended 61% of its ready load. By 4 a.m., 13 minutes after the first Iranian launch, the intercept phase was complete. 68 of 73 weapons neutralized. 5 produced effects, 3 debris fields in desert terrain, 1 runway lighting array damaged, 1 vehicle disabled. 0 U.S. military personnel lost. 1 minor injury. The adversary's first strike had achieved none of its military objectives. The U.S. response had not yet begun. 3:57 a.m. While the intercept sequence was still processing final engagements, the targeting machine had been running in parallel since 3:47 a.m. The Combined Air Operations Center completed the targeting cycle for the counter-operation by 4:05 a.m. 211 aim points assigned across 94 separate military installations. Each aim point, a weapon type, a platform, a time on target, a backup weapon. The targeting analysis that had taken Desert Storm's planner 6 weeks was executed in 18 minutes against a target set the CAOC had been refining for 3 years. At 4:03 a.m., CENTCOM transmitted the execute order. A Los Angeles-class submarine holding station 312 nautical miles northwest of the carrier group completed its final targeting confirmation and began its Tomahawk launch sequence at 4:06 a.m. 22 TLAMs entered their flight profiles over the following 4 minutes, each programmed for a specific military installation across western and central Iran. The submarine fire was the opening wave of a sequence that expanded to Tomahawk salvos from 2 additional surface combatants, strike packages from the carrier air wing, JASSM-ER, releases from B-1B Lancer aircraft holding airborne alert 900 kilometers from the Iranian border since 1:15 a.m., and, for the deepest hardened targets, a pair of B-2 Spirit bombers at 52,000 feet above the Gulf of Oman, carrying ordnance that nothing else in the U.S. inventory could replicate. By minute 15 of the counter-operation, $847 million in precision munitions were in flight toward Iranian military installations. The invoice was still accumulating. The adversary's entire first strike missile inventory, 22 years of development and production, assessed replacement value $3.4 billion, had achieved no military effect. The U.S. was preparing to expend $1.9 billion to systematically dismantle the infrastructure that produced it. 4:02 a.m. EA-18G Growler electronic attack aircraft had been airborne since 3:10 a.m., forward positioned at standoff range. Authorization arrived at 4:02 a.m. The Growlers flooded the electromagnetic spectrum across the frequencies used by Iran's Integrated Air Defense Network, S-300 PMU, 2 search radars, Cordad-15 fire control systems, the data link frequencies connecting nodes across the IRGC's air defense architecture. The Bavar 373 battery outside Tehran continued operating. Its frequency hopping capability placed it outside the primary jamming envelope. The Growler flight lead noted this, loaded his ARGM-ER and set a timer. 11 minutes. The Bavar 373 threatened the B-2 egress corridor. Its engagement had to be timed with the B-2 mission sequence. Simultaneously, U.S. Cyber Command activated a communications relay node in Ahvaz province that had been quietly exploited 14 months earlier, maintained in passive observation for exactly this scenario. The activation targeted the IRGC Air Defense Command's internal communications system. Message confirmations began arriving 12 to 18 seconds late. Status updates stopped populating command displays. The adversary's situational picture became unreliable precisely when reliability mattered most. At 4:06 a.m., 4 AARGM-ER anti-radiation missiles launched from F/A-18Fs at the edge of Iranian radar range, homing on active S-300 PMU, 2 emissions in Khuzestan and Fars provinces. One tracked a passive reflector decoy the IRGC had deployed to simulate an active S-300 unit. The AARGM-ER eliminated the decoy. The actual S-300 site, 3.8 kilometers distant, continued operating. The crew received the decoy result via data link seconds later. A second AARGM-ER was released at 4:09 a.m. It found the actual emitter. 3 of 4 initial engagements were effective on first pass. The 4th required re-engagement completed at 4:09 a.m. The decoy had cost 3 seconds and 1 additional missile. Nothing more. By 4:15 a.m., Iranian radar coverage had been eliminated across approximately 78% of projected strike corridors. The Growler flight lead's timer reached 0 at 4:21 a.m. He released the AARGM-ER targeting the Bavar 373. It impacted the radar site at 4:23 a.m. Tehran's primary long-range air defense coverage ended at that moment. The adversary could not see what was approaching from 4 simultaneous axes. 4:12 a.m. The first Tomahawk impacts occurred at 4:12 a.m. against IRGC missile logistics infrastructure in Khuzestan. The nearest targets, not the highest priority. The priority sequence began 3 minutes later, 4:15 a.m. The IRGC's primary ballistic missile maintenance and storage facility in Fars province, hardened shelters and maintenance buildings representing 12 years and an estimated $340 million in construction, received 4 sequential Tomahawk impacts over 90 seconds. First weapon, maintenance infrastructure. Second, secondary storage. Third, the communications relay for the facility security network. Fourth, liquid propellant storage for the Shahab program. 12 years of construction. 90 seconds of weapons delivery. At 4:17 a.m., the B-1B Lancers began releasing JASSM-ER cruise missiles at 35,000 feet, well outside Iranian coverage. The lead aircraft released 14 in 48 seconds, $19 million in ordnance cycling through a single weapons bay in under a minute. The second aircraft followed with 11 more at 4:18 a.m. By 4:19 a.m., the United States had expended $1.6 billion in precision munitions since the execute order. 47 JASSM-ERs in simultaneous flight, 62 Tomahawks still en route. The B-2s had not yet released a single weapon. At 4:19 a.m., one JASSM-ER's imaging seeker failed to acquire its assigned hardened target. The building's thermal signature matched surrounding terrain more closely than pre-mission imagery predicted. The seeker reported no acquire. A backup Tomahawk already in flight on a convergent approach course was retasked via in-flight targeting update. It impacted the aim point at 4:31 a.m. One aim point, 2 weapons required. The redundancy had been planned. The F/A 18F pilot on the Isfahan axis received a SAM acquisition alert at 4:20 a.m. The Bavar 373 conducting a speculative long-range engagement attempt from near maximum range. He initiated a 15-degree heading change and descended 4,000 feet. The guidance signal went to noise at 8.4 seconds. He corrected back to his planned route. At 4:21 a.m., the Growler released the ARGM-ER that ended the Bavar 373's operational existence. The threat to the B-2 egress corridor was eliminated exactly on the timeline built into the plan 11 days earlier. 4:22 a.m. The IRGC Aerospace Force Command, operating from a secondary center in the Alborz mountain range after its primary communications node went dark at 4:01 a.m., transmitted its reserve activation order at 4:22 a.m. Partially degraded by the Avaz node intrusion, but enough reached 2 coastal battery commanders, the reserve, mobile Khalij Fars, and Hormuz, 2 anti-ship ballistic missile launchers along the Hormuz coastline and on Keshem Island. Held back from the initial strike specifically for this contingency. A U.S. counter-operation in progress, carrier group at the highest value remaining target. 6 Khalij Fars and 2 Hormuz. 2 launchers achieved launch at 4:24 a.m. 8 ASBMs, terminal phase maneuvering capable designed to defeat Aegis intercept geometry. The CEC network flagged the new launch signatures at 4:24 a.m. 7 seconds after ignition. 6 of 8 ASBMs were intercepted in mid-course and early terminal phases. 2 completed their terminal maneuvers and entered final descent. The first SM-6 engagement was clean. Intercept at 4:30 a.m. The second SM-6 was a near miss. The ASBM's 3-second lateral maneuver degraded the intercept vehicle's intercept geometry past lethal radius. The Aegis system recalculated in 0.4 seconds and fired a second SM-6 at 4:30 a.m. Intercept confirmed at 4:30 a.m. at 8,400 meters altitude, 34 kilometers from the carrier. Flight deck operations had not paused. Aircraft were launching at 60-second intervals throughout. The Gambit, failed. But it required the battle group's SM-6 ready load to absorb 14 intercept shots against 8 targets. Significantly greater expenditure than standard ASBM engagement doctrine. The cruiser's VLS was operating at 67% remaining capacity. The adversary had committed their reserve. It had not been enough. 4:28 a.m. Message confirmations arriving 22 seconds late by 4:15. 2 of 6 regional command nodes not responding by 4:20. Not because they had been physically engaged, but because Tomahawk impacts on relay infrastructure had severed their connections. By 4:28 a.m., the primary command center received its last coherent field status report. The report said, missile batteries in Fars province non-responsive. Radar coverage across Khuzestan offline. Coastal reserve launchers confirmed launch. Post-launch status unknown. After 4:28 a.m., no further outbound orders from the command center reached any field element. Not because the command center itself had been engaged. Because the network connecting it to the field had ceased to function. The adversary did not surrender. They did not transmit a ceasefire request. They simply stopped existing as a coordinated military force. The silence populated the CAOC's displays as tracked emissions ceased to refresh one by one. Green icons went amber. Amber went dark. The silence was the operational picture updating in real time, 4:25 a.m. to 4:47 a.m. The B-2s had been holding at 52,000 feet for this phase specifically, the target set that no other weapon in the U.S. inventory could address: hardened underground facilities. Fordo buried under 80 meters of rock and reinforced concrete. An IRGC command bunker in the Alborz Range. 2 missile production facilities with underground components that had resisted targeting solutions for years. At 4:25 a.m., the lead B-2 released a GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, 13,600 kilograms of guided weapon arriving at the rock face at velocity calculated to achieve maximum penetration before the delayed fuse sequence initiated. The weapon impacted Fordo at 4:25 a.m. Seismographs in Turkey and Azerbaijan registered a 2.2 magnitude geological event. The second B-2 experienced a 5-second weapons bay door delay at 4:31 a.m. A hydraulic actuator sluggish from low overnight temperature at altitude. 5 seconds at that aircraft speed represented 3.4 kilometers of ground track past the calculated release point. The aircraft continued, recalculated, completed the release at 4:31 a.m., targeting the IRGC command bunker. The primary target remained engaged. No aim point was missed. The final Tomahawk impacts occurred at 4:47 a.m., the last weapons in flight reaching missile component manufacturing facilities in Isfahan province, the industrial base of the IRGC's ballistic missile program. At 4:47 a.m., the active weapons employment phase of the counter-operation was complete. 4:48 a.m. The colonel responsible for the original target list had been in the CAOC since 1 a.m. He had built that list over 31 months, updating it quarterly, wargaming it against different adversary response scenarios, refining the weapon-to-target matching as new intelligence arrived. He watched the final confirmation populate for aim point 194 at 4:48 a.m. Green. 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 194 aim points confirmed or assessed probable. 12 flagged for follow-on engagement. 5 pending imagery confirmation. He did not speak. He saved the strike assessment file to the classified network and flagged it for the damage assessment team assembling in the adjacent cell. The file would be classified for 30 years. The assessment it contained would be studied in professional military education programs for considerably longer. He picked up his coffee cup. It had been cold since 3:30 a.m. He drank it anyway. The operation consumed $2.2 billion in precision munitions. Restocking the Tomahawk supply alone would require 14 weeks from the nearest forward position stocks. Interceptor resupply to pre-operation readiness levels would affect the group's operational tempo for months. One destroyer required port return for CIWS ammunition resupply and hull inspection, following minor sensor array fragment damage from a close-range intercept debris field. Combat capable, but requiring formal assessment before the next operational tasking cycle. 3 personnel injuries across the operation. 2 minor fragment wounds at the Al Dhafra Patriot Battery from a high-altitude intercept debris field at 3:52 a.m., 1 minor injury at the Al Udeid perimeter from the 3:54 a.m. close intercept debris pattern. All returned to duty before the counter-operation was complete. 1F/A-18F crew executed a precautionary divert to Al Dhafra after a hydraulic caution following evasive maneuvering at 4:20 a.m. No structural damage. Aircraft returned to service within 2 hours. The geopolitical aftermath began the moment international media received first reports. The UN Security Council convened at emergency session within 4 hours. the IAEA director issued a statement requesting Fordo access. Iran's UN mission transmitted a formal protest at 7:15 a.m. Gulf time, containing no ceasefire request and no specific demands. The absence of demands was itself a data point. It indicated that the parties responsible for formulating demands had, as of that hour, not been able to reach each other. Time from first launch detection to completion of counter operations, 61 minutes. Adversary weapons launched. First strike, 73, 26 ballistic, 47 cruise. Desperation gambit, 8 anti-ship ballistic. Total, 81. Intercept rate, first strike, 93.2%. 68 of 73 neutralized. Effects from non-intercepted weapons. 3 debris fields in desert terrain, 1 runway lighting array damaged, 1 vehicle disabled. Intercept rate, desperation gambit, 100%. 8 of 8, final 2 requiring second SM-6 engagement. Combined intercept rate, 94.1%. Counter-operation munitions deployed, 22 submarine-launched TLAM, 62 surface-launched TLAM, 47 JASSM-ER, 2 GBU-57 MOP, 4 ARGM-ER, plus SM-3 and SM-6 defensive interceptor expenditure. Total distinct offensive weapons employed, 137. Adversary installations neutralized or operationally degraded, 194 of 211 cataloged aim points confirmed or probable. 12 requiring follow-on engagement. 5 pending imagery confirmation. Estimated adversary ballistic missile force reduction, 67 to 74% of cataloged inventory rendered non-operational through direct engagement of launchers, storage, and production infrastructure. U.S. assets lost, 0 platform losses. 1F/A 18F precautionary divert returned to service. 1 destroyer minor sensor array damage, combat effective. Personnel, 3 minor injuries, all returned to duty. Total U.S. munitions cost, $2.2 billion. Estimated replacement value of adversary military infrastructure neutralized, $11.4 billion. Exchange ratio, 1 to 5.2 in U.S. favor. Operational status, Carrier Strike Group combat effective. All air bases operational within 90 minutes of final intercept. THAAD and Patriot batteries combat effective following reload. Assessment, adversary's offensive ballistic missile capability reduced to below operational threshold. Coastal anti-ship capability operationally disrupted. Air defense network reduced to approximately 17% of pre-engagement capacity. The U.S. expended $2.2 billion. The adversary lost $11.4 billion in military infrastructure developed over 2 decades. The exchange ratio was 1 to 5.2. But the number that mattered was not monetary. It was temporal. The adversary needed 22 years to build what the U.S. dismantled in 61 minutes. The mathematics were not complex. They were simply not survivable.